Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. This is Mike, and this is Mike Dell's World number 399. Oh my gosh, we're going to hit 400 at some point, but at my latest rate of publishing, might be a while. Hopefully not. I do plan on doing this more frequently, but I always say that and never do it, so your mileage may vary. But thanks for staying subscribed and or following, because I do put stuff out from time to time. I don't know if you can notice any difference in the audio. Probably not. But I got new toys, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But a little bit of a personal update. Nothing crazy in as far as life. It's all going swimmingly. Like I said, nothing crazy going on. Busy at work and busy with other podcast projects and whatnot. As you know, I always talk about Podcast Insider and the Auto History podcast, which goes in fits and starts, but eventually we'll get that on a somewhat regular schedule. It's a little bit different because I have a co-host, and scheduling doesn't always work out, but that's all right. Fall seems to be in the air here, at least this weekend, but it's supposed to kick back up into the 90s after this weekend. But today's high is supposed to be 60. So I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's a little on the chilly side, when you're used to 70s and 80s and sometimes 90s. But, that's northern Michigan. Don't like the weather. Wait a minute. But all that's going good. We did go down to the opening game for Michigan football last weekend, over the Labor Day weekend, and then we camped all of Labor Day in a town called Ypsilanti. And if you go look at the show notes, you'll look at the spelling of that town, and it doesn't look anything like it sounds, but the true pronunciation is Ypsilanti. And it's basically between Ann Arbor and Detroit. Like I said, not too far out of Ann Arbor, and that's where University of Michigan is. So, but yeah, we decided we'd just take a camping trip instead of getting a hotel or driving down, driving back. It was a night game, so I didn't want to get home at 3 a.m. So we thought we'd bring the camper with us. So that's what we did. And we got to leave the beagles at home. Both the beagles are doing good, but they're a pain in the butt camping because you can't really leave them in the camper, and you can't really leave them in the car when it's hot out. And it's just inconvenient. So my mom came over and watched the dogs for the weekend. That was cool. And made it a very relaxing-ish trip. The other thing we did while we were down there, we went to the Michigan Flight Museum, which is formerly known as the Yankee Air Museum. That's on the grounds of Ypsilanti Airport, or Willow Run Airport, actually is what it's called, but it's in Ypsilanti. And that's the old B-24 bomber factory back from World War II. In fact, in the museum, they have a whole section about Rosie the Riveter, which was based on a person that worked at that bomber plant, and actually got to watch a video of her being interviewed. So I'm guessing sometime in the 70s or 80s, but it was really interesting. If you ever seen the poster with the woman with looked like she was a factory worker, holding her arm up, said, "We can do it." And that was Rosie the Riveter. And like I said, she worked in the B-24 factory there at Willow Run. So that was cool. And, the museum's got some cool airplanes. They got a Blue Angel F-18. They got an F-4 from the Vietnam era. They got bunch of World War II stuff. Got an F-84 jet from the Thunderbirds. So they got both the Navy and the Air Force covered there. And it's a really neat museum. It's smallish, Of course, I'm used to the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. which is huge. And I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago and didn't make it out to the Uverhazy Center at Dulles, which is a big museum as well, but I'll make it there someday. Did get to walk around the Washington Mall and visit all the war memorials and the Lincoln Memorial, Washington Memorial. That was cool, but I got about 5 miles in that day and came home on Friday. I was sore as hell. I sat down in the recliner and fell asleep, and I woke up. Apparently I caught the plague while I was out there and was sick for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. Just no voice and just generally yuck. Felt like a cold. I don't know what I had. I didn't get tested for COVID. What's the point? But it was a cold, flu, COVID, whatever it was. I call it the plague. But all better now. A couple weeks later, good to go. But one thing I did notice being close to Detroit, and I have no particular problem with Detroit. A lot of it's quite nice for a big city. Yeah, but there's a lot of sketchy areas in Detroit, but apparently there's some sketchy areas in Ypsilanti. We were coming back from Ann Arbor, went over to Ann Arbor to visit my nephew who lives there. And on our way back, we need to top off the gas. And so, we get off the freeway in Ypsilanti and I pull into a gas station and none of the pumps work. What the heck is this? And so then I go to another station and none of the pumps worked. I don't get it. So I went in that one and I go in there and the clerk at the gas station is behind bulletproof glass. And if you want to buy anything, he has to put it through a little hole in the thing. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I went to another gas station and the pumps actually worked. But of course went in and again, everybody's behind bulletproof glass. I've come to the conclusion there's two things. And Ann Arbor is not like that, but Ann Arbor, it's impossible to find a place to park in Ann Arbor. Just absolutely, of course, game day, it's going to be real crazy, but this was after game day. And you just can't find a place to park or even stop. So I ended up, we went to a deli. She wanted to get some stuff at the deli, and I couldn't find a place to park. I dropped her off, and I circled around the block, circled around another block, went up down the street. There was no place I could just sit and wait. There was no place to park and get out of the truck. And I just don't know how, between those two things, if it's high enough crime area where the gas station attendants have to be behind bulletproof glass, I don't want to live there. Same thing with parking. If I have to pay to park, and that wasn't even an option in parts of Ann Arbor, it just was no parking. But in other parts, they have paid lots. That's fine. I don't mind that if I'm just visiting, but I will never live somewhere where paying to park is routine. And I'll never live somewhere where my local gas stations have to be behind bulletproof glass. I understand that happens in a lot of places in the country and all that. And I understand that that's kind of a tough job to be a gas station attendant. But in my humble opinion, they should have a 12 gauge behind the counter and, that or some other form of self-defense for the workers, and that might deter some of the crime, but you never know. I just don't want to live in a place like that. I don't mind visiting. That just happens from time to time. I get it, but I don't have to like it. Anyway, so that's kind of the personal update. So I was talking about, did you notice any difference in the audio here? Probably not, because I have this new device set up similar to the old Rodecaster. And I shouldn't say old, it's pretty new too. But I was at Podcast Movement in DC. That's what I was there for. And I met the guy that invented this device called, let me see, I wrote it down, Audio Sigma Pod Mobile DSP. And if you want to see it, it's at bswusa.com. I'll have a link in the show notes over at mikedell.com. But it's a neat device. This particular one he hand built. Now it's being manufactured in Texas. So it's all U.S. made, and it's a really simple mic interface, USB, and it also works. It's powered off of the USB, so there's no power cord. You can plug 2 mics in it. It has a compressor limiter gate. He calls it the denoiser. And you just hold the button with the mic plugged in, and it will adjust to the room, the noise level, and all that stuff. And pretty much, you can set different levels of the noise blanker. I've got it set at the mid level because I don't think I'm in a too noisy spot. But it was absolutely amazing. And it's a small device. I would say 4 inches by 6 inches and maybe an inch and a little bit thick. And it's really super simple controls. You got a gain knob, you got a headphone volume knob, and then on the back side, you got a couple of buttons for the denoiser and the level of the denoiser and, a couple other things like that. But it's super dead simple to set up. And the really cool part about it is it'll run off of an iPhone or an Android or an iPad. So you just plug the USB into that device and, do the denoiser thing and set your gain and whatever recording app you have on your phone and or pad. It works just the same. And you can also, has what looks like a network plug on the bottom of it. And you can actually take these and string them together. So if you need 4 microphones, you plug 2 of them in together. If you need 6, you plug 3 of them in together. It's a really cool setup, and it's really portable. That's what's pretty wonderful about it. It just works. And that's always the way in podcast hardware. In my opinion, the easier it is to record, the more likely you're going to record and keep recording. So with this thing, literally, I turn it on and hit record. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that the Rodecaster has. The Rodecaster's cool because, you can fire off carts and whatnot. And I suppose you could do the same thing depending on what kind of recording software you're using. But man, this thing it's super dead simple and it's really cool. I really, really like it. And it comes with a little case that you can throw in your backpack. And if you want to record mobile, you can do that. You have to bring the mic and the cable. It has XLRs. It even does phantom power if you want to do a condenser, which I don't recommend for most people, but it's really cool. So check that out, the Audio Sigma Pod Mobile DSP. And I've been using it basically as my main phone and Zoom stuff, right here in the office. I have disconnected the Rodecaster Pro II that I have, and it's a really nice device too, but this one is quirky. So, I would come into work in the morning and the phone would ring and it'd answer, and, of course it's through the Rodecaster, and the Rodecaster apparently had lost connection with my computer. And I even tried 3 different computers. I just bought the what I call a mini Max, but Mac Mini with that's maxed out on RAM and storage and processors. So I've got the I think it's the M3 Pro or M3, whatever the top one is, and I figured, okay, well, I'll just get some big hardware, and that should make the Rodecaster play nice. And it still has issues. So I've kind of given up on that for now. I'll put it on the shelf and let it collect a little dust and probably bring it out at some point. But I'm really liking this Pod Mobile. So that's the thing here. Let's see. We had a webinar yesterday, Blueberry and Fountain, and a guy from Chris from Jupiter Broadcasting put on this webinar talking about Blueberry and all the podcasting 2.0 stuff and value for value and whatnot. And, I got to tell you, if you're not using a modern podcast app, which you can find over at podcastapps.com, or I'll have a link directly to it in the show notes there. But, you can do a lot of things. It'll show the transcripts. It'll show, you can do a boostagram if you're hooked up with a wallet, and Fountain makes that really easy to set up a podcaster wallet or a listener wallet. Oops, I'm getting called here. Hang on, we'll put it on pause. Is it recording? Yep. Okay, I'm back. I'm not used to stopping these in the middle, but had a phone call I had to take. It's just the way it is. But anyway, these modern podcast apps, you got all these things. My favorite in air quotes is Fountain. Go check it out. One of the cool things about Fountain is, say one of the podcasts you listen to does a live stream, it will pop up and give you a notification saying, hey, this podcast is going live, and you can hit that and you can listen or watch, depending on if it's audio or video, right in the podcast app. That's pretty cool. But, and it also has the value for value. Like this one's enabled for value for value. So if, you could stream Satoshis, you can put in a boostagram and I'll get that. It's a kind of a paid comment, and it's 100 millionth of a Bitcoin is each Satoshi. So, you send 1,000 Satoshis and that might be a quarter, something like that. But, the cool part about it is it gives you interaction with podcasters that are value for value enabled, and there's quite a bit of them. If you go to podcastindex.org, you can search for podcasts there, or within Fountain there, and there'll be a little $sign or whatever that it denotes that one is value for value enabled, and it's a really good way to interact with podcasters. I do it pretty regularly on the Podcasting 2.0 show with Adam Curry and Dave Jones. And, it's really cool. They'll, read your boosts on air, or on the show, either live or, the recorded show afterwards. But, it's, Podcasting 2.0 and the Podcast Index, project, it's mainly for free speech. It's taking control away from the big companies. Podcasting has always been free and open via RSS. And, the Podcast Index also has a namespace initiative, the podcast namespace. That way it's generic and it's not controlled by any company, but it adds features to RSS, which has not happened since Apple joined, podcasting back in 2005. A lot of the innovation has gone away, because, why bother? Apple's doing it. And that's been the case up until a few years ago. And now with this podcast namespace, we're adding things like transcripts. The show has a transcript. And if you're in a Podcast 2.0 app or you're listening on the website, you'll see there's a closed captioning button, and you can see, what's going on as it's going on. So that's pretty cool. And that's one of the Podcast 2.0 features that Apple actually adopted. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can see the transcript of just about any show now. And that's thanks to the Podcast 2.0 project or Podcast Index project. Same thing. They're interchangeable. But, there's a lot of new stuff coming in podcasting that, it hasn't happened in years. And Blueberry, the company I work for, is the leader in podcast hosts adopting these different tags, as they call them, or feature. We call them features, so they're kind of invisible to the user. But you can add chapters, you can add, album art. You can have chapters where the album art changes every subject. I don't do that. It's a lot of work, but you can do that. Got a more robust location tag, which, shows up in certain apps that put that in. And it's all up to the app developers what they put into their app. Fountain, Podverse, Podcast Guru. There's a whole bunch of them. Like I said, go over to podcastapps.com. And, there's all these new modern podcast apps that, and some legacy apps in there too. Like Podcast Addict for Android, has adopted a lot of the tags, and they've been around way longer than the 2.0 project. Of course, Apple did the transcript, and they did one other tag for verification called the text tag. So they're embracing the namespace somewhat. They're not all in on it. What's the other one? I'm trying to think of the name, but it's another popular podcast app. I forgot. It's the one that's owned by Automatic, which is the people behind WordPress. And it's a popular one. Marco from, boy, I'm just drawing blanks today. I don't know why. But I've been using Cast-O-Matic as well as Fountain. What is Marco's? I'm sure you heard of it if you're on Apple. I don't know. It's not showing up on my phone here. I'll think of it later, maybe. Overcast. There we go. Overcast. And he hasn't yet adopted any of the tags, but he's close, I think. I hope. Everybody's bugging him about it, and he doesn't really like people telling him what to do, so who knows. But it's quite the project. And if you're a podcast listener, as you obviously are, or a podcast creator, go check out podcastindex.org and all the stuff they got going on over there. One of the really, really cool things about a lot of these podcast apps, these new ones, is Podping. And what that is, okay, so on Apple, if I publish this episode, say 4:00, it might not be in Apple for 5 to 24 hours. But if you're on Fountain or Podverse or Cast-O-Matic or any of those, they use the index and they use Podping. So within 2 minutes, I would say, it's sometimes even faster than that, your listing will update. If you're a podcaster or if you're a listener, as soon as I publish this, you'll have it available in Fountain. Really, really, really quick. And, of course, with my publishing schedule, such as it is, quick is probably not too important, but, it's just one of the other features that really makes this, enhance the listener experience and even the podcaster's experience. So very cool. Well, enough about podcasting since I got rid of my podcast-related show other than Insider. We get to talk about this stuff all that much. So, that's what I'm doing. Also, in the last episode, I talked about dumbing down smartphones and the death scroll, and people are just tied to their phones. They go out to dinner, and there'll be two people sitting at the table, and they're both on their damn phones instead of interacting with each other. So I also talked about the light phone, that I thought that might be a cool way to have some smartphone features without all the distractions. Well, come to find out, one of my friends / listeners, Zach, had an old light phone with a cracked screen, but it still worked just fine. And the cracked screen doesn't even bother me. And anyway, he gave me his light phone to play with. So I got a light phone 2 here, and I got a secondary number because I'm not ready to take the plunge completely. And it's exactly what it's supposed to be. In fact, it's kind of weird. I'll have the thing sitting here on the desk, and I'll open it up again, open it up, and like, okay, nothing's happening. Well, of course nothing's happening, because I'm not letting it happen. I don't want it to happen. If somebody calls me on it, it rings, I answer it. Someone texts me, it pings, and I look at the text, and I can text back. It does voice to text. But that's really all it does. It also has podcasting on it. I don't know how they do it, but that works really good. You have to subscribe to the shows on the web interface. You log into your light phone account, and you can subscribe to shows, and they sync to the phone, and it even does Bluetooth to the car. So, you can have that. It also has navigation and a couple other things, but it's very rudimentary. But there's no web browser. There's no email. There's no, Facebook app or Twitter app or X app, whatever. There's none of that. So, you can't just play on the phone unless you're texting somebody or talking. There's nothing to play with. And I think if more people got on that program, I think we'd be a lot happier. This sitting there death scrolling Facebook or X or Instagram or whatever. This thing doesn't even have a phone or a camera on it. It's just a smarter dumb phone. The only thing I have to say that I don't particularly care for is the screen is just a little too small for me to comfortably read, and I haven't found a way to blow up the text. There may be a way to do that, but if the text was just a couple sizes bigger, it would be more practical for me, old guy thing. Or maybe I need to get my cheaters a little stronger. We'll see. I got an eye appointment, I think Monday or something. So maybe that's it. I just need to adjust my glasses a little bit. But I really like the thing. It's teeny tiny. It's a quarter the size of my iPhone, and it's easy to carry around in your pocket. You don't have to. It's just cool. So I've been playing around by I set my iPhone to forward phone calls to this other discrete number, and I carry that and leave, and it doesn't track you. There is a GPS, but it doesn't track all your movements like iPhone and Google and Facebook and everybody else you've given location privileges to tracks where you've been and where you're going and all that stuff, and pops ads up on it for it, in certain apps. And this thing just doesn't do that. It's a phone, and it can text. And what's really cool is it does voice to text, because I hate typing on those little screens, screen keyboards. But it has a screen keyboard, and it's usable. So far I like it. I'm debating. They have the Light Phone 3 coming out, which does have a couple other features. It actually has a camera on it. But it's essentially the same sort of thing. I think it's a little bigger. I don't know. I have to look at a comparison, but it's It's so far so good. I really like it, and it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and that's part of the charm of it. A dumb flip phone is fine for just talking on the phone, but it's hard to text on because you got to do the T9 texting, and it's not good. And most of the flip phones, I think there is a modern flip phone that actually does have voice to text. I think I could live with a flip phone too if I had voice to text. Texting is just a way of the way of life these days, it seems. So it's good to have that capability. But again, it's something like if you go to a restaurant and you got your light phone, there's nothing to look at unless you're getting a lot of texts, but there's just nothing to look at. So you have to be with the people you're with. And I really like that. So we'll see when the Light Phone 3 comes out, whether I take the plunge and do that. But so far I'm liking it. There is a couple of disadvantages of not carrying your smartphone around, but I think what I might do is I'll carry the Light Phone and the iPad. So, the iPad, you're not going to sit at the dinner table and use your iPad because it's too big, but having it with me, then if I absolutely need to look something up on the web or whatever, have the iPad nearby. I'm not going to carry it, but I'll put it in the car. So that might be the solution. I don't know. I'm not quite ready to take the plunge, putting my main number on the Light Phone, but as a secondary, then I can easily forward I can't forward text messages though. I wish I had that capability, but iPhones do not have that capability that I know of. So anyway, that's my report on the dumbed down phone thing. Like I said, I'm really thinking about the Light Phone 3 when it comes out. It's kind of expensive though, like $500, but again, what do you pay for an iPhone? I think I paid $1,200 for the one I got, and they're not getting any cheaper either. So anyway, let's see other things. Really having a lot of fun flying the RV-12IS over at Giving Wings Aviation here in Traverse City. It's a sport plane. Looks kind of like a little fighter jet, if you ask me, but it only weighs 1,320 pounds maximum, and about a 30-foot wingspan, low wing, bubble canopy, stick controlled rather than a yoke. There's no steering wheel looking thing. It's just a stick like a fighter jet. Got a single throttle because it's fuel injected, so you don't have to deal with mixture. You don't have to deal with carb heat or anything like that. It just put the power where you need it and fly the airplane. It is a little bit high tech in that the avionics on it are, it's like a couple of iPads glued to the glare shield and or the dashboard, I guess you'd call it, and GPS in the middle and the radios in the middle and whatnot. It's got full autopilot. It's really a sophisticated little airplane. But the cool thing about it is, they're cheap to run. They only burn about 3 or 4 gallons an hour, which is half what a Cessna 172 will burn. But of course, 172 is twice the weight and not significantly bigger as far as wingspan and length, but, yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. I've been flying there for now about a year, and enjoying it a lot. It's a fun airplane to fly. It's definitely something that would be nice to own, but they're a little expensive. Not terrible, but they're brand new airplanes. They're not 50-year-old Cessnas and all that, which, like I said, there's a charm to these old airplanes. I'm really thinking about building an airplane, but I don't think it'll be an RV-12, although they are available in a kit, but that's a lot of work and a lot of money. I think the cheapest you can get an RV-12, all the kits and the engine and everything, still close to $100,000 or somewhere in there. And you can buy them factory built for probably $150,000, but it's a lot more fun than a Ferrari for the same price. So, I don't think I'm in that ballpark, but I am thinking about building an airplane, probably a Kolb or a Challenger or a GT 400 or 500. I forget the manufacturer of that one, but they're ultralight kind of looking airplanes, but they're more substantial. They're light sport, and usually have about a 60 to 100 horsepower engine, and build time on them is significantly less than an all metal airplane. So they're fabric covered, and the Kolb has folding wings, which should be handy because I could build the thing in the garage and put it on a trailer to haul it to the airport to fly it, and then fold the wings out. And then when I'm done, fold the wings up, put it back in the trailer, and haul it home. I wouldn't have to pay for a hangar. But then again, I'm sure that becomes a pain in the butt. But neat little airplanes. That Kolb, I think it's the Firestar model. It's a 2-seater and flies about 75 miles an hour and, stalls at some ridiculously low amount of speed. So, how much trouble can you get in at 40 miles an hour, And the one downside of that is you got to be a lot more cognizant of the wind conditions. With the RV, I can have up to 11 knots of crosswind component, and that's the quote unquote limit. I'm sure it would do more than that, but for sanity's sake, you don't want to go when it's gusty winds in the wrong direction and all that. But like I said, I'm sure it could handle it, and I'm sure I could probably handle it. I don't know. I've done an 11 knot crosswind in it and no problem. So probably go a little higher, but a Cessna 172 is 15 knots crosswind is the demonstrated max. Although I'm sure it would do more too. I've flown the 172, and compared to the RV-12, the 172 is a truck, and the RV-12 is like a Miata. About the same size interior space, and handles really, really good. You don't have to move the stick a hell of a lot to get a lot of movement out of it, and that can be good or bad depending on your training. But I've flown it enough now. I got about 60 hours in it, and it's pretty natural now. If I got back in a Cessna, I don't know what I would do. But good stuff. Like I said, continuing the flying hobby here, and got to get some more flight time in. The weather hasn't been conducive to my schedule. Every time I have time, either the airplanes are busy. I got a couple of them over there at Giving Wings, and either the airplanes are booked when my schedule allows it, or when they are available and I'm available, the weather's not right. Low clouds or too much wind, or some other thing. So the last couple of weeks I've kind of struck out a lot. I've had several flights scheduled and then canceled. But this weekend I plan on flying a bit, and the weather looks like it's conducive, and there's at least one airplane available, maybe two. So it'll be fun. Go, and I'll have a link to the RV-12 and Giving Wings in the show notes over at mikedell.com. And so that's my update. Again, I always say this, but sorry I take so long between episodes. But a lot of times it's just a matter of when I have time to podcast, I don't have anything to say. Or if I have a lot to say, I don't have the time. And, I started this episode 399, probably a month ago. I was going to do one, and that's when the Rodecaster messed up on me. I recorded the whole dang thing, and then I didn't have a good file. So now that I got this new gizmo, the Pod Mobile DSP, hopefully I won't have any technical glitches. So when I have time, I flip on the mic and go. So anyway, again, thanks for staying subscribed. Definitely check out a new modern podcast app over at podcastapps.com. And, of course, full show notes and anything else I've got going on, you'll find over at MikeDell.com. Catch you next time.